Welcome to June and what to do now in the garden, and what a fantastic month June is. June is the month when we can really enjoy our floriferous blooms, so we can be cutting little posies for our house, deadheading obviously to make sure that we can keep our flowers coming, keeping an eye on some of those little pests like the slugs obviously in the garden. We can also take cuttings to get ourselves ready for next year. So I'm going to now show you one of the jobs that you can do now in June. June is a fantastic time for clematis. You can see this one here, Gerandii, is wanting to really get going. If you're quick and are able to take a cutting from a shoot that's non-flowering, you can actually make a whole new plant. So I'm gonna go through here and just cut above 2 leaf elements there. And so now, this little baby, quite quickly, if I move, is going to get potted up and become a new plant ready for next year. Here we have the cutting. For clematis, it's called an internodal cutting, and that's because we take it in between these 2 leaf nodes here. Now we're looking for a stem that's not too soft, but also not too woody. So this one's going to be perfect. So snip here, take the tip out, and also take off one of the leaves, just so that we don't have too much transpiration going on. So there it is. And whether you want to use rooting powder or not, I know that people have different preferences. I'm going to try a little bit of organic rooting powder for here. Just dip the end in. And then into a pot of peat-free multi-purpose compost. It needs to be kept moist and quite warm. So perfect if you've got something like this little propagator here. And then hopefully that will be rooting out in about 6 to 8 weeks. And here are some more jobs that you can be getting on with in June.
This time of year, sweet peas are really growing quickly. By the early summer, they're making 4, 5, 6 inches of growth a week, and they need something really substantial to cling on to. Now, we made a basic tripod of big twiggy growth to start them off on, but then we've also interwoven on one side of the tripod some small twiggy growths and woven them round and round so that they give small twigs for the tendrils of the sweet peas. They'll cling on to those twiggy growths and scramble up the other side of this tripod really successfully under their own steam. But the trouble is with leaving the tendrils on your sweet pea plants, you'll find that they not only cling on to the twiggy supports, but they also cling on to one another. And if the tendrils hold on to the flowering stems in one or more places, you'll find that that will cause the flowering stem to bend, and then you don't get nice straight stems for a vase. One side of the tripod, I'm going to let the plants climb up themselves by their own tendrils, but on this side, I'm going to train the sweet peas in what's called the cordon method. Now, the cordon method involves taking off the tendrils from the plants and then tying the plants into their supports so that the plants don't waste their energy producing the tendrils and getting all tangled up together. And actually, if we take that off, all the energy will be diverted into the growing stem. So what I'm doing on this side of the tripod is using some canes, some straight canes, which I'm going to push into the ground here, in between the big main supports. The next thing to do is to go up, thin out the plants a little bit, take out some of the jumble of shoots, just to leave the strongest ones that you can train in, and then trace along the stem, right from the bottom. The earlier you cut them off, the better, and less energy is wasted. With no tendrils on, you can then tie this stem to one of your upright posts. So just take some ordinary soft string, tie it first to the cane, once, twice to do a locking knot, and then take your stem and gently push it into position, lightly wrap the string around the stem, just loosely tie that into position with a double knot, and then take another piece of string. You can't do this often enough actually. Loosely tie that in, double knot that off, and there we have our first stage in cordon training. you'll have to keep checking these every couple of days, cutting off the tendrils from the newly developing leaves and tying them in periodically up the stem. So I've got plenty to get on with.
There was a time, a few years ago, when these beautiful flowers, dahlias, named after Dr. Dahl, were out of fashion. Oh, we thought they're so naff, we don't want to grow those. And that meant that we missed out on a garden plant which starts blooming in June and which carries right on until the frosts in October, November. What a waste! Well, we came to our senses mercifully, and now dahlias are deservedly popular plants in flower beds and borders. If you haven't got any, the easiest way to start off with them is to buy them, you can buy them in packets like this, as tubers. There they sit, looking really rather strange, with these great fat long roots. But if you look at the top, you'll see shoots coming. Now this proves that this is actually a root tuber. A potato is a stem tuber because a potato's got eyes, buds all over it. This hasn't. It just has a bud at the top. So this is a root, and there comes the shoot. The way to really get it going is to take several of them and just bed them into trays of damp compost. Tuck them in. You're not planting them properly. What you're doing is another one, look, with all the shoots coming. You're just encouraging these shoots to grow a little bit bigger. This tray can go into a greenhouse cold frame if you haven't got anything more, or a porch. I'd start doing this with them in late March, April. It gets them growing through the month of April, and when they get a bit more growth on them, and I'll pretend that this one here has, you can then, with a bigger shoot, pot them up. There's a little shoot on the top of this. Wait until it was a bit bigger and a few more roots down there, and you can then just pot them up individually to give them a bit more root room. Again, keep them in a greenhouse. Dahlias are frost tender. They can't really go out into the garden safely until mid-late May in the south, early June up north in Scotland. But when they're about this size, and believe me, they grow like fury once they've got the protection of a greenhouse. No great heat, just freedom from frost. When they get this big, that is when you can plant them out in the garden. Now, it'll come as no surprise to you that dahlias are greedy. I mean, just look at this. It's almost 99% water. It's succulent. It's fleshy. So they want to go in a spot that's been really well manured and had some general fertiliser dug in, good old bloodbone and fish. And that's what they're getting right here. They're also getting very good light. They don't like shade at all. We're natives of Mexico. Pretty hot and sunny there. So on your prepared ground, take out a hole to coat with this plant. Now what I've done, I like to do with everything I'm planting out, is soak this before I plant it, a really good drenching. And because it's not necessary to have flowers on it this early in the season, I'm just going to snip these off to conserve its energy, just taking them down to the bottom of the stalk there. Take them inside, put them in a vase, in my case, for the missus. And then you can tap this out of its pot. It should come out quite easily. There we go. Look, really ready and raring to be planted out now. It's getting hungry in there. Sit it down so that the surface of the compost there is level with the surface when you've finished planting. Around it goes that soil, and you can firm it in with your knuckles. Doesn't really need a wellie at this stage. What it will need as it gets taller is a stake. You can use 1-inch square timber, which is often sold as a dahlia stake, but a really good stout bamboo cane like this, pushed in alongside it so that it's really sturdy. And as those stems start to grow up, then you can loop soft wire around them and tie it in. If you want to produce buds for exhibition for the local flower show, when they start forming like this, you see these two little buds down the side here? If you take those off, just pull them off and then snap quite readily. Like that, then this central flower will grow much fatter, much bigger, and much more capable of winning prizes. That's some way off yet. What you must make sure is that they never go short of water. Give them a really good soak in, puddle them in with a can without a rose, a sprinkler head on the top, and make sure they don't go short of water when they're growing. When it comes to feeding, once those flowers start to open, give them a liquid feed about once a fortnight. And then, with any luck, you'll win prizes either on the show bench or from her indoors.
Whether you're growing tomatoes outside in the garden or in a polytunnel like this, or in a greenhouse, in containers, in grow bags, they all need feeding, and I'm going to show you some different methods of doing that. So first of all, liquid feeding. You don't start feeding a tomato plant until the first flower truss is set. The fruit just is beginning to develop. It's about 60 centimetres high, something like that, and that's the point that you would start to liquid feed once a week. If you're using a proprietary mix, then just measure it into a container. They're all different, so read the outside of the bottle first and just measure out exactly how much you need to go into a watering can. Either pour it into the watering can and then fill the can up with a tap, and that'll mix it up for you, or pour it into the water like this and give it a mix with a cane. So next I'm going to water, and there is a method to doing this. What you don't want to do is sprinkle it around everywhere, covering foliage and fruit. It's not particularly a foliage feed. You want to soak the roots. But the other thing that's important to add is that you never do it to an absolutely dry plant. So if you come in and find that your plants are already quite dry at the base, give them a bit of a water first before you then liquid feed. Otherwise the plant sucks up that concentrate so quickly that it's more likely to burn the tissue inside than it is to feed the plant. So this is a gentle feeding process. So take the watering can, lower it to the base of the plant and just water until it's really well soaked. Go right round it. The roots on a tomato plant go out quite a long way, so don't focus right on the stem because you might rot it if it gets too wet, but just water right round it until it's really well soaked. So an alternative liquid feed is comfrey tea. I'm sure you've heard of it, but comfrey tea is something that you actually make. So you grow comfrey. Bocking 14 is what to go for. It's a sterile flowered comfrey that won't invade your patch. It's very vigorous, but it won't self-seed everywhere. And you make tea out of it. Now you can either steep it in a bucket where you'll get this awful smelling liquid which can be poured into a watering can and then onto, or diluted and put onto your plants. Or you do what I do, which is to create a concentrate. And so I bruise leaves, stick them in a funnel and let the exudate fall out of the bottom of the funnel into a bottle or a container, and then use that as my concentrate instead of a proprietary mix. The thing about comfrey is that it's really high in potassium, which is what helps to set fruit and really feeds the tomato crop well. So it makes an ideal feed. Some people use nettle, but that's quite high in nitrogen, and there's enough leaves on a tomato plant as it is. It's the fruit that I want to encourage. So comfrey tea is a really good alternative. So whilst liquid feeding is a routine operation once a week, top dressing, which is what I'm going to do now, is something that you might do maybe 3 or 4 times through the growing season. It's just to give them an extra boost. A compound fertiliser like this one, which is pelleted blood, fish and bone, is ideal. It's the potassium I'm after really, so you could use potassium sulphate, which is a straight fertiliser and it's really dissolvable, so it's sort of instantly available to the plant. But this is more gentle and it will do the job as well. So read the pack first and make sure that you've got the rate right. But I've done this lots of times and a handful is plenty, and you just throw it around the base of the plant, and then when you're watering, that waters into the ground and then the plant can take it up. So just sprinkle it around the base of the plant. So an alternative to buying a compound fertiliser and spending more money is to come back to this comfrey again. This is a very slow release option, but all I'm going to do is top dress my plants with comfrey leaves. So I'm going to bruise them first so that they've begun to break down, and that breaking down will release the nutrient into the surface of the soil and feed the plant. And I'm also going to chop them up a bit because it just makes them easier to spread. So I'm literally going to chop them onto the soil and then push them in around the plant. So I've got a pile of chopped up leaves and I'm just going to pop them around the base of the plant. And those get watered in, and over the next 2 or 3 weeks they'll go a bit black and they'll begin to release that exudate into the soil directly around the plant and feed them every time I water.
So if you've enjoyed this video and you want to join me again in July for more tips of what you can do in the garden, then hit subscribe and come and join us at Gardener's World.